Hi folks, my name is Tim Savage. I'm the immediate past president of the Orchestra of Northern New York, and I have the distinct pleasure today of interviewing Gabe Schmid-Doyle. He was a participant in the 2020 Young Artist Competition. And Gabe, we'd like to welcome you to the behind the scenes of ONNY.
Thank you, Mr. Savage.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Early memories, where you grew up, what are some of your interests?
So, my mom and dad are teachers, obviously, and now, well, my mom is an administrator, and my grandparents on my mother's side loved opera. So that was one of the things, like, from my family, like, they had a very eclectic kind of love for music. Like, like, we have a lot of stuff from around the 70s and 80s when they grew up, but also, like, stuff from before, like, a lot of stuff from Ken Burns Jazz, that documentary, and a bit of modern stuff now, too.
Any classical music in the house?
Yeah. One of my favorite pieces when I was a young kid was Ein keine Nacht music by Mozart.
Sure.
And we had a lot of those kind of just like on like single songs, like I don't know if we had them on tape, we probably had a lot of it on record, but we would put it all on iTunes eventually by burning the CDs and the tapes and the records to it, and that's how we had a lot of our music.
Wonderful. As you said, an eclectic background. Well, what is your musical background?
Well, I had liked music a lot from, I mean, I really remember when I was about 6, but I know it was before that because I would pester my parents a lot about how I wanted to play the trumpet and play the violin, stuff like that. Because a bit because those were the two instruments that I could name the best.
That would make sense.
And so eventually, for my 6th birthday, I got a violin, and I started taking lessons when I was 6.
Very nice, very nice. What would you say are your most vivid experiences thus far in your musical career?
A big one actually happened fairly recently on the search for colleges. That whole trek that all high schoolers take by the end of their year, and we at one of the colleges, which is now where I'm going to, SUNY Purchase, we had signed me up for taking like watching the Latin Jazz Orchestra practice. They even actually had me play one of the songs with them.
Wow, where did you do that? Was it on the campus at SUNY Purchase?
Yeah, it was just a
great experience.
Yeah, and very like just on the spot, like, okay, now do you want to play a tune? And there was also, I also took a class with Pete Mellenberny for jazz harmony. Well, I kind of just watched that one because they were playing excerpts that the students had written for arranging a jazz tune for 3-horn.
Pete's a tremendous piano player and the director of jazz studies, I believe, at SUNY Purchase.
Yeah.
Did you know that he's a graduate of the Crane School of Music?
I did not know that.
Yeah, so.
Wow.
Yeah. And so what else happened on that trip? If I'm not mistaken, that developed into something else unexpected.
Yeah, so one of the things that I had asked was of the bass professors, both Todd Kuhlman and Doug Weiss, was if I could take a lesson with them, because when you're going for music, that's kind of like the best thing that you can do to find your school. And, you know, Todd had offered a lesson at his house because he wasn't on campus the day that we were visiting.
Where does he live?
I think somewhere in New York City. It's somewhere in the city.
That's what I thought, yeah.
But then Doug Weiss said, I can't, because I'm performing and practicing at Birdland for the Birdland Big Band with Professor David DeJesus, and he's like, "You're welcome to actually come to the practice and maybe even sit in on one of the songs in the practice." And so I get there, and he's not there because he was running late. It's the city, the traffic, and everything. So there was a student from Purchase sitting in for the practice. I had met him earlier that day, actually, at the Latin jazz practice. But he arrived, and I talked with him, and it was great. And I watched the performance, and at intermission, I happened to stop by David DeJesus, who is the leader of the Birdland Big Band, and Doug Weiss, and they were like, "So do you want to perform a tune with us for the second half of the set?" And totally unprompted, I was just going there because I like, oh yeah, it sounded great, and it's amazing to see this live. But so I was like, oh, okay, sure, I will. And, like kind of a trial by fire.
So you've played live in Birdland at this point in your life?
Yes. No, that was crazy.
Pretty vivid experience.
Yeah, and it was like sight reading too, so I'm like, oh my God, I gotta look at this beforehand.
What was the name of the tune?
Lowdown by Thad Jones.
There you go, it's the real deal stuff. Hey, could you give us an overview of what instrument, you said you started on violin at age 6?
Yeah.
What other instruments have you worked on since that time?
So I started on violin and played that for a few years, and by in 5th grade I started both the trumpet and the piano that year. Trumpet because that's 5th grade is when in Canton you start band, and piano because I know my mom wanted me to do it. I was interested in piano, and my sister did not want me to play piano because that was her instrument at the time.
So that was a motivation for you.
Yeah, the belligerent little brother.
Sure.
And so I started those two, and I had asked Mr. Bakira, who was the 5th and 6th grade band director at the time, if I could eventually play French horn, because that was an idea floating around my head, because my mom was like, that'd be an interesting thing for you to play. And I was like, yeah, sounds cool. And so, but I think by the end of 6th grade, I started playing the French horn as well. I can't remember at the moment if it was the end of 6th grade or beginning of 7th grade.
And
yeah.
Played French horn in the bands for a few years, right?
Yeah.
And you went on to, from the French horn, you got an interest in what?
From the French horn, it was actually the first, it was the end of 8th grade when you came to me and were like, so how about our bass player's leaving, so do you want to try out bass? And I remember saying just, sure. It was very just like, in a very small event, but it was just like, it's always funny because it's just like such a small event for like what was to follow. And that's when I started the bass.
Between 8th and 9th grade.
Yep.
And I believe Eric Gagliardi, one of our graduating seniors, or was he a junior going into his senior year, gave you a little bit of introduction to the instrument?
Yeah, I think you're right. He was a junior going to senior that year because he was the same grade as my sister, who was a senior when I was a freshman. So.
Okay. And his dad, of course, is
Dan Gagliardi, who plays the bass, and I eventually got some lessons with him too.
And after that?
I worked with Carl Doty, who has been definitely one of the best teachers I've had for the instrument. It was amazing.
Yeah, he's a very, very versatile player in all regards.
And that was what was so great about it. It was just like I learned not just jazz, which was what I was interested in, but eventually like classical and I should have asked him for fiddle bass, but yeah.
How did you hear about the Young Artist Competition?
Well, we frequent ONNY concerts. My family frequents them. We actually eventually started getting season passes because it's like technically costs less money than getting each ticket individually, and you know you get them in the mail a little bit before, so you don't have to rush beforehand to get the tickets. So, so we went to ONNY concerts a lot, and that's where I had heard about it, but I didn't think much about it other than that's cool. And I knew actually a couple of the people who like placed in it, but it was funny because then 2 years ago now, was it when you approached me and you were like, it's probably too late for this year, but maybe you want to think about trying out the Young Artist Competition. And I was thinking, oh, that could be cool. And I was thinking at the time violin, but by the end of that year, it was like, no, I'll try it on bass.
Neat. How did you go about preparing for the competition?
So this is when I started getting better at practicing, because I used to be awful about practicing. And one of the big things that I started doing was actually doing good warm-ups. Like I had a warm-up routine and schedule, and that would be about 15 minutes before I practiced. But what also helped me practice and keep focused, because I had to start practicing both longer but in longer blocks than you really could, because the school year comes and you have to either drop more things, which what I didn't want to do. I wanted to keep on doing like all the extracurriculars, but then you also have to do it a little more concentrated. And what helped was I was also preparing a lot of the repertoire for college auditions at this time. So if I needed to take a break from the song for the competition, then I could start working on like my etude for Ithaca or my 3 jazz pieces for the video audition for Purchase or something like that.
A lot of material you were working on in conjunction with the piece for the Young Artist Competition.
I mean, yeah, but like I said, it kind of helped a bit because, I mean, you can only focus so much on one single thing, and it makes it easier to hone your skills when you have multiple things to work your skills on, rather than being like, okay, so now I'm only going to work on this piece 2 hours a day for 6 months. I mean,
it's very insightful, Gabe.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you say we give a listen to an excerpt from the Young Artist Competition, your performance?
Sounds great.
All right. What is the piece and where are we in it?
It's movements 2 and 3, but we're only listening to the end of movement 2 of Koussevitzky's bass concerto.
Let's have at it. Beautifully done, young man. Beautifully done. Boy, that's pretty high for a bass.
Well, I mean, that's
Getting into the violin territory.
Oh yeah. Well, that harmonic section is like, that was actually, it was funny to look at the comments afterwards, and that was like the part that everyone was like, that was good. That was good. Because
good control, for sure.
oh my God. That was the piece, like early practice. That was definitely the hardest piece of that first movement when I was first practicing, because it was the tone that you need for that. It was hard to get a good tone because, I mean, it's harmonics, you're high, and it's easy to mess up.
Well, you got a beautiful warm tone up there, and the musical line throughout the whole excerpt was just exquisite.
Yeah.
Would you recommend the experience to others?
Oh, yeah. It was one of those things. This was one of the most nervous times, because for performances when I'm like in a band or something, I don't really get that nervous, but for something like a solo, it's very nerve-wracking. And for this one, because I don't think I was personally at the caliber, well, I know for a fact I wasn't at the caliber of some of the other musicians there, if not most, because it was such a high level of musicianship. But the fact that I was able to play and listen to some of these like fantastic musicians, it was like, I mean, maybe not for like it was definitely eye-opening, but it was also just like all the work that I had done beforehand elevated my ability musically, but just it was great to see like that hard work pay off.
Good for you.
And it's
Who was your accompanist, by the way?
Jarrett Larson.
Did you enjoy working with him?
Oh yeah, he was great. He was funny. He also had like a lot of good, insightful tips for not just like the playing the piece and some of the musicality of the piece, but he actually helped me like with a technique for practicing that I've actually used a couple times, and it is just so crazy how that single technique is like very good at getting parts of a song like up to speed.
Excellent. Well, it's just like you to get the best out of anyone that you're around. I know I speak for all of your teachers that you've been a joy to work with for that reason. You pay attention and you use, you take what you can use to go to the next level, and it's just admirable. Hey, what's the next big thing on your horizon? Where would you like it to lead?
Purchase. I mean, I mean, going to college just in general, it's crazy, and going for not just music, but for like whatever like little class that I can take that can be like a nice detour and a skill that I can develop, because it's like gaining both a skill to add to the arsenal of skills that you use to adapt and to use in situations, but also just honing musical talent, well, hard work and talent, I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
And skills.
Do you see a career in music? Do you see it as being an avocation that makes another part of your life, rich and complete?
At the moment, I'm hoping that I can perform I don't know how many years, but like perform a few years in New York City. That's one of the good things about Purchase. I mean, they have a lot of access to like places to work and play and stuff in New York City, so getting connections and who knows, like maybe eventually getting a degree in music education, but hopefully performing for a few years and doing well at it.
Well, I think that's a tremendous set of plans, and you certainly have all you need to succeed at a high level. Gabe, it's been a pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you so much. It's been great being here.
Super. Thank you, everyone.